Yeah. Righty. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Manson. I'm president of Catholics for Choice. I'll be your facilitator for the next 40 minutes. It's my pleasure and my honor to introduce this distinguished panel. The Synod's meeting for LGBTQIA and ally Catholics. In addition to being president of Catholics for Choice for 12 years, I wrote a column at the National Catholic Reporter. It was called Grace on the Margins. I came out in my first column in 2008. It was a very different church. It was a very different society. I could not have imagined we would be where we are now. Yet I'm painfully aware of how far we still have to go. And that's why we have this panel today. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Miro, Mara, Marianne, Miki, and Mark. Coming to a cabaret near you soon. This is a very full, very distinguished panel with a limited amount of time. I'm going to introduce each panelist just before they speak and ask them an individual question. We'll do one round of that, see how it goes based on timing. We may do some follow-up, but there will be time for questions. In the room in Rome, from Bristol, Bristol will be WhatsApping me questions, and online audiences can type their questions into the YouTube chat as long as you are signed in. So let's begin with Miroslav Maťavka. Miro is from the European Forum of LGBT Christian Groups and is particularly interested in European East-West division. So Miro, I'm hoping you can set the political stage for us about what is at stake and how deeply influential the church is on society and society is on the church. From full support of marriage equality or trans rights to criminalization, there is a growing polarization on these issues. So according to your experience from living both in the East and West of Europe and your work with the global network of Rainbow Catholics, where does the Catholic Church stand on overcoming these divisions? Are church leaders acting against or contrary in support of this division? And how does this affect ordinary people of faith?
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Sure. Well, first, to me, why I tried to answer this polarization. The microphone. We're working on the mic. Okay. So this basically. Now it's working. Okay. So now it should be working. Basically, I grew up in communist Slovakia in the 80s, where as a Catholic person, I was living under the sort of John Paul II teaching, what we heard about the natural law and all this kind of stuff. Throughout my puberty, when I found out that I'm gay, I was living in Slovakia according to the teaching, so abstinence and thinking that I'm called for the chaste life as a gay man. But then, for whatever reason, when we had the change of the systems, I managed to, in early 2000, live in UK, where I found my vocation and tried to join the Jesuit order. And through that process, actually, I, as a gay person, and admitted to myself that it is okay to be gay. And that's where I learned that how the church's position is important for the individual, even to live in the society. We have, Slovakia is a really homophobic country in the ILGA, which is a rating of attitudes of the general public towards LGBT people. Slovakia is always on the bottom, as well as Poland, so the Eastern European countries. And in these countries, Poland, Slovakia, Catholic Church has a big influence. And it is really affecting the lives of the individual person, because you feel sort of trapped with that if you want to be a good Catholic, you need to live according to the teaching, and the teaching that you are being presented by the church leaders is forcing you to internalize homophobia, internalize transphobia. So you basically grow up as a person hating yourself for something that has been God-given to you. And this is a huge difficulty for those people. We heard in the clip a lot about victims being trapped, either physically or mentally. And in these countries where you have these attitudes and the church leaders still communicate the teaching their own way, they force people, the people are trapped in hating themselves for their sexual orientation or gender identity. And throughout my experience, then when I lived in UK or then in Germany, where I was actually working with a group called Queer Gottesdienst. It is a LGBT Catholic group in Munich, where they celebrated just last year 20 years of working, and they had Cardinal Marx leading a mass to celebrate for them. And when I met Cardinal Marx, I was introduced as I'm a Slovak representative. And when the Cardinal Marx heard, "Oh, Slovakia, oh my gosh, you're bishops." So for me, it was already this sort of this split, that we have this divisions, that we have, even though it's not all rosy in countries like Germany or Britain, but it is totally different level for the people that are either in Eastern Europe, or we have in Africa, where still homosexuality is being criminalized, and where you have still the position of the church is not being clear to enforce the representative of the Catholic Church to fight the criminalization of people who cannot change their sexuality. It is appalling, and I'm trying to combine these experiences that I have, my own experience in Slovakia, or through the work that we're doing either at the European level with the European formal LGBT Christian groups, or as well as a member of the global network of Rainbow Catholics, that the global positions, the global experiences that when we share from the representatives from Asia or Africa, which is totally different experiences that they have. And I would hope for a Catholic Church which is so global, but should share the same values, that it is not enforcing at least the basic principles of humanity to helping interpret the teaching correctly. We had Luca sharing some of their research that they're doing at Wingard's Institute, and at the European Forum level, we worked with them a couple of years ago on this academic statement that they were publishing, that we're working, which was basically sharing the Christian opposition or Christian arguments against same-sex partnerships. And for me, it was as well astounding that, for instance, in my home country, how even the theologians opposed it. You know, that you didn't really have a rational discussion. It was all based on either you follow the teaching or you don't. There was no freedom of doubt. So there is this really a divide, that rationality in some Catholic countries is not even allowed, and this is really affecting as well general public, because in countries like Slovakia or Poland, Catholic Church, Catholic hierarchy has a big power even on what's happening in the governmental places.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Miro. Excellent. I was remiss in not saying people's pronouns, even though it is bolded on my page. My pronouns are she, her, Miro is he, him, and now it is my pleasure to introduce Mara Klein, pronouns they, them. Mara is a member of the German synodal path regarding the invisibility of trans and non-binary realities within theology and the church. So, Mara, for the last 3 years, you've participated in the German Synod, representing your generation as well as the queer community. What role did LGBTQI+ topics play for the German path? And how do you evaluate their significance for the World Synod that's happening now?
Are we working? Can you hear me? All right, great. I was part of the German Synod, but I was not invited as a trans person. I was invited very much last minute to represent my generation amongst 14 other young people, because they realized that the voices of young people, and by young I mean younger than 30, would not be heard at all otherwise. At the first assembly already back in 2020, I felt that the way some bishops spoke about the issue of abuse within the church was unbearable. They behaved as if they were the victims, not the upholders of an oppressive system that allowed for abuse and discrimination to happen. At the first meeting, I spoke up, challenging by citing theology of liberation and by outing myself as non-binary person. No bishop and most lay people didn't know about non-binary people before they met me. Another trans person who also belonged to the young people and was not recruited as a trans person spoke up about how his identity as a trans man was utilized by a priest who abused him sexually, to keep him quiet, quote unquote, who will believe someone like you over me. The issues of discrimination, invisibility, and abuse are interconnected within the church. The testimonies of LGBTIQ+ people in the German Synod and through the initiative of OutInChurch made this connection clear to many inside and outside the Synod, who then started to support us as allies. I emphasized in the beginning that I was not invited to the Synod as a non-binary person. They didn't know. However, by speaking up, I brought a topic into the Synod that no one had anticipated, including myself, actually. Going in, I had no hope to discuss LGBTIQ+ matters. I thought we'd be lucky, brushing on women's rights. Within 3 years, we managed to alter Catholic labor rights in Germany so that LGBTIQ employees did not have to hide any longer. We went from bishops having never heard or let alone seen a trans or non-binary person, to some bishops even openly supporting trans, inter, and non-binary rights, in their ability, of course, to do so. The texts on LGBTIQ rights we managed to produce, which by the way have been translated to French, Spanish, and English in the meantime and are available online, ended up being more revolutionary than the texts on women's rights, who fell frightfully short. Bishops felt the pressure to act in view of LGBTIQ testimonies, while the testimonies of women who were also present and very outspoken in a synod maybe seemed less new to them. However, queer rights and women's rights are interconnected. If we ask for equality, we ask for equality for all. Women's rights profit from queer rights and vice versa. There is a long way still to go. The demand for LGBTIQ rights and the visibility of our realities brings the radical disruption church and church leaders apparently require to change. The church in Germany is not looking for a global solution. Contrary to Rome's perception that grew more and more hostile over the years, many of our texts are for a local context or beg the Pope and global bishops to reconsider matters of discrimination rather than demanding really anything. These topics are pressing, but obviously they are not in line with the interests of power preservation for a heteronormative patriarchy. With the church losing significance in Europe and Germany in particular, now more than ever there is a need for us to adapt to a society that is appalled by the church's crimes against human rights. With right-wing powers gaining influence worldwide, now more than ever, there is a chance for churches to make a real statement, to go ahead with inner change and show that we aren't a community who stands for violence and hatred, but a church who stands for and with the marginalized, to reconnect with the gospel and advocate the strength that lies in love and real equality for all. At least for the German context, I am convinced that the church of the future must be a church that defends plurality and human rights on all levels, or else it will fall into insignificance, or worse, will find itself on the wrong side of history once more.
Excellent. Thank you, Mara. Thanks so much, Mara. My pleasure to introduce Marianne Duddy-Burke, my longtime friend and co-conspirator. Marianne's pronouns are she, her. She is Dignity USA's executive director and co-chair of the Global Network of Rainbow Catholics. Marianne is a married mother of 2 children, one of whom is a trans son. Marianne, welcome.
Thank you. Did I kill the mic? Okay. It's not on? Okay. Thank you, Spirit Unbounded, for having us all here today. It's an important conversation. No. Okay.
Might have opened it up.
No? I don't know. Is this working now? Okay, great. Here's an echo. Okay. So clearly the Synod, can we get rid of the echo? Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
They,
Don't pop it all.
So clearly the Synod is a major event in the life of the global Catholic Church, and I think all of us here hope that it moves the institutional church towards greater accountability, inclusivity, and responsiveness to the needs of the world today. I would say that the 3 main priorities that Dignity USA and the Global Network of Rainbow Catholics have heard in regards to the Synod are decriminalization and an end to the dehumanization of our lives, pastoral responses that centers the individual and the family, not dogma, and opens all sacraments to LGBTIQ people, and changing official church teaching on sexuality, gender, and relationships. Yet we cannot pin all our hopes on what happens among official delegates, in the recommendations made to the Pope, and in the Pontiff's decisions about whether and how these recommendations are implemented. We as Catholics cannot wait on these outcomes to take more personal responsibility for living a mature faith, for prioritizing the voice of God we discern deep within our own prayer and study, and for caring for our communities and our world. These are things that LGBTIQ+ communities, perhaps more than any others, have enormous experience in doing in our church. We have had to learn to trust the truth of our identities, embrace them as God-given blessings, and claim the sacredness of our relationships and our gender despite official teachings, pastoral practices that exclude and dehumanize us, and having our own church disseminate the vilest of beliefs about us. We have seen the LGBTIQ+ community expand its circle as people of varied sexual orientations and gender identities give voice to their identities. It has not always been easy to find common ground or to understand how to address needs that feel new. We have done so through listening, trusting the truths each of us speak, and truly believing that it is our Christian duty to embrace each other, even those who seem very different from us, as created, graced, and deeply loved by God. Therefore, we have a duty to honor their dignity and respond to their needs. We have modeled striving to do so in a way many others in the church could learn from. In a church that denies us sacramental recognition of our commitments, refuses to use our true names, bans us from religious life or priesthood, fires us not for being bad at our jobs, but simply because of who we are or whom we love, tries to prevent us from parenting, and, as in my country, bans us from meeting in Catholic spaces for daring to speak truth, LGBTIQ+ Catholics and allies have claimed essential elements of Catholic tradition in finding innovative ways to live our faith. We have created our own rituals, adapted from marriage or baptismal rites, validated the ministry of those whose vocations are unrecognized by the official church, supported those forced out of paid employment or volunteer service in the church, and lived the reality that the church is not a building, but the gathering of God's people. We have reached beyond our own pain to serve others who suffer, refugees and asylum seekers, people who are hungry, ill, addicted, impoverished, imprisoned, victims of war or violence. In doing all of this, we have modeled how Catholicism can and must be flexible enough to address the real human needs of many across place, culture, identity, gender, relational status, and so on. One of the key demands of LGBTIQ+ people has been to have openly queer people among the official Synod delegates. As of now, there is no such representation of us or our families in the audience hall. We advocate for such inclusion so that discussion of LGBTIQ+ issues, which emerged as a priority in every continental listening process, include those who can speak for ourselves and that our realities are not interpreted by those who do not live it. In addition, we need to be in the room so that the particular gifts and graces of our community can be seen as resources to help our church overcome the many challenges it faces as it seeks to live the message of the gospel in our current world.
Thank you, Marianne. It's my pleasure to introduce Miki Herrlein. Miki's pronouns are they, them. Miki is a board member of OutInChurch, a campaign for church without fear, which is discrimination-critical and internationally renowned. They are also currently under contract as an education consultant for the diversity unit of the Archdiocese of Freiburg. Miki, similar question to Marianne. As a non-binary person, what hope do you have for the Synod?
Thank you, Jamie. Do you hear me? Good? Okay. Well, people ask me all the time what, as a non-binary person, is my hope for the Synod. And since I'm an impatient person, and because change is long overdue, I guess, do you think so too? I don't expect much. Change can only be an updated teaching. We don't need that pastoral sugarcoating. And I won't bow down to a meaningless everyone welcome in the church. You remember the Pope Francis' words at the World Youth Day in Lisbon. What we need is a legal certainty in the church so that fascists can no longer justify their one-dimensional worldview biblically and catechetically. Wow, what a word. Because this costs quite a few human lives. How many trans people are persecuted, humiliated, and murdered worldwide? How many of us are being forced into suicide? Should I be patient? When right-wing forces around the world become stronger and stronger, do we have to fear that Nazis might be back in power soon in my country? And what will happen then? Will they then come and deport us with buses in economy class? I would like to turn the question around and ask, what hope does the church actually have in queer people? How can it be a listening church if it doesn't listen at all? How is it supposed to learn if we are not invited to the Synod? They talk about us, okay, of which we are lucky, but not with us. This is exactly the opposite of an option for the poor and oppressed. Here too, the situation is the other way around. The church needs the voice of the oppressed to credibly carry the gospel into the world. Lost my line. We have already proven our depth of faith. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here anymore, after all the insults and injuries. We are here only because Christ loves us. Our Out in Church campaign has made visible what many of us have had to endure for years. The testimonies are numerous and yet are not listened to. And it really sounds like a mockery when the Pope, of all people the highest link in the chain, described the synodal path in Germany as elitist. Seriously? I mean, yes, of course, the synodal path is entirely academic. It has to be if it claims to analyze the systemic causes of sexual abuse in the church and draw the right conclusions from them. On the synodal path, those affected were at least heard. Queer people were also involved. Mara had a vote, coincidentally. But that's exactly what it's about. Queer perspectives and equal rights are needed in theology, in the priesthood, in pastoral work, and of course here at a World Synod. Out in Church has fought hard for the rights of queer employees through our visibility. And that's why we are here, to be visible and proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final panelist is Mark Guevarra. Mark is a board member of Concerned Lay Catholics Canada and a doctoral student at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California. His interest in this issue is deeply personal, having been fired as a pastoral associate for being in a same-gender relationship, and there are hundreds more like you, Mark, in North America. Mark, you served as a lay pastoral worker in a parish for 8 years. According to your termination letter, you were fired for being gay and in a relationship. What are your hopes for the Synod?
Thanks for the question, Jamie. Can everyone hear me? Okay, I'll try my best to speak louder a little bit in the back. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopes and fears. Thank you so much, Miki, for sharing your own hopes. I've had the pleasure of spending the last several days with you here and hearing your own story, listening to your fears, anxieties, but also hopes. And it's so wonderful that we gather fundamentally because of these hopes. I apologize at first if my answer is going to be a little bit simple. My first career was being a catechist, teaching young children about Jesus. But I also am a theology student, so I have to, I guess, use big words like catechetical. But yeah, so what do I want? My first hope is for an official apology. Apologies from the institutional church to those who've been harmed and excluded, our LGBTQ plus siblings, women, the poor, disaffected Catholics, youth even. We've listened in millions of listening sessions, and in summary after summary, we've heard that the church has excluded people. And not only words of apology, but tangible steps of reconciliation and healing. In Canada, it took the finding of the remains of children to get an apology. What more? And we were all taught this. You know, as a catechist, I had to teach kids the 4 steps of reconciliation. Does anyone remember? The first, contrition. Number 2, confession. Number 3, absolution. And number 4, penance. Do we even get a sense of contrition from our institutional church? How far do we still have to go? My second hope is a call to lament. We've heard over and over again that we cannot do synodality without prayer. Well, what kind of prayer are we doing when we are deaf to the cries of the poor, the migrants, the dying in the Holy Land, the marginalized, us LGBTQ+ siblings? We need to have within our Sunday Mass, Sunday after Sunday, a time for lament. I appreciate the liturgy yesterday when we took time to lament. I appreciate this morning, this beautiful chair of ribbons in Bristol, a sign of lament and solidarity. We need to do this. Let us embed this in our liturgy. My third hope for the Synod is tangible change of certain teachings, church structures, laws, and policies, most especially to amplify the voices of those marginalized by the church, and to make their voices not simply consultative, but binding. As a member of Concerned Lay Catholics in Canada, we strive for that. In Canada, we strive to amplify the voices of abuse survivors, women, LGBTQ+ people, and the Indigenous peoples. Does everyone remember the Synod Handbook and the preparatory document? Wasn't that amazing? At least for me, the questions, the attitudes for being synodal, the pitfalls which we are supposed to avoid. I was invited to lead a Lenten parish mission on synodality, and I used those attitudes as a form of penitential reflection. Imagine if we could just use that. We have already a source of wisdom of which we can draw from to be synodal. My fourth hope is for real change, to formation at all levels in the church. Every seminary, theology school, religious education program, catechetical program needs to be reformed to be synodal, to teach how we are to be synodal. Every lay person needs to be re-engaged, needs to be empowered to work for change. And without that, we'll only perpetuate clericalism. We need to be formed in a communion with each other. But I know how hard this can be for a church that's not usually accustomed to even saying hi to our neighbors in our pews. But we have to do it. A little bit of dying in each of us just to say hello, good morning. Building bridges to one another, reconciling with the other, restoring relationships. This is preaching the good news today. And all of these are necessary tasks on the synodal path. Those are my hopes. Apology, lament, legal change, and renewed formation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all so much. We have 10 precious minutes for questions and answers, and I have been getting flooded with fantastic questions from Bristol and from online. So I'm going to take one AB of those, and then we'll do one from the Rome audience. Make it good. No speeches, please. Just a simple question. We are very tight on time. A little bit of spice and a little bit of hope. How do you deal with the fact that we know a lot of our clergy are gay, and I suspect a number of them are transgender? It's a question, something we don't even we need to talk about as well. How do you deal with the hypocrisy, and how do you maintain your faith with an institution that works tirelessly and spends endless amounts of money to take away our rights? Easy.
Well, it's not easy to deal with that. I mean, I grew up with that hypocrisy in this seminary of priests.
Close.
I think. Yeah. Okay. When I studied theology, I think more than 50% of the priests were gay, but they had this internal homophobia. So I think it's not their fault. We have to understand that. It's not their fault that they learned a strategy to hide. Know it and to understand it, that's my way.
I always wonder whether someone shouldn't say to the bishops, if you won't do it for us, lay people who are openly queer, do it for your queer brothers in the office, because they are suffering as well. Mm-hmm. Maybe their souls are even suffering worse than ours, because we find community in each other, and that's something they don't have. I don't want to pity them too much, obviously. It's just a strategy for me to think about it and to think about it with mercy, rather than to get too angry about it to do anything. Yes.
Excellent.
I'm with Mara on that one. I think a little bit of pity and vulnerability. When I was fired, I became the most public gay Catholic in the country. And that was scary for a lot of priests, including some of my friends. And what do you do about that? And for me, it is what Jesus did in the upper room with the apostles, to share his woundedness with others as a method for shared vulnerability, for faith and for hope, but also calling them to their own vow that they be conformed to be like Jesus. Is this what Jesus would want?
I think there's so much that reflects the need for radical changes in our church in that question, because, clericalism plays a role in this, the really flawed views of gender, sexuality, and relationships, and this hierarchicalism, patriarchal, all of that is wrapped up in why so many gay priests, gay bishops, potentially trans folks are trapped in a system and do evil to themselves and do evil to others. And I think that second part of that question is also really important. Using the resources of our institution as a force of oppression needs to be pushed back against by the people of God, constantly, forcefully, consistently, rejected in our name.
Thank you, Marianne. Okay, Rome audience, you get one shot, one question. Make it good, make it short. All righty, Nancy.
I was wondering, when you mentioned that one of your big hopes for the Synod is renewed formation. That's kind of a broad, general term, and I wondered if you had in mind priestly formation or a formation of ordinary people in the pews?
Yes, all of it. Absolutely all of it. As a catechist, we were formed to learn about the 6 ways we're supposed to form the people of God. And one of the ways I talked about in the video for the conference is formation for synodal life. And it begins young. Like I said, we don't even talk to the people in our pews. How are we supposed to be synodal? How do we tear down structures if I can't even tear down the structure in my heart that disables me from saying hello to my neighbor? We've reduced Christianity to following propositions rather than trusting that in my neighbor the Holy Spirit is speaking. In my neighbor's cries and in their wounds is Christ calling out to me. That is the renewed formation that we need. Very simple. Very simple.
Thank you, Mark. I failed to repeat the question there for our audience online and in Bristol. The question was about formation and asking Mark to develop that idea. And so that was Mark's excellent response. We have 4 minutes. We have a question that's interesting that came online. Can you imagine a time where there is no longer an LGBTIQ community? When there is simply one Christian community?
I hope not, because you would lose a whole lot of fabulousness if that goes away.
I hope there's going to be a time where we aren't queer anymore, in the sense that we are not opposition to a norm. That's instated, but that we are all, you know, just a community. Nothing that has to be singled out. Just people who live their lives. There will always be people who are excluded, and we will always have to renew church, obviously. But maybe then it's us who are getting criticized, and I think that would be a wonderful change. It's the hope, the dream.
Thank you. Super quick question. Since we have like 2 minutes, why not? Let's take advantage. Because there's some straight people in the audience. Yeah, I know. Can you believe it? They want to know what they can do as allies, that there is this silent majority of people that do support us. What can they do?
If I may speak, for instance, in my region, it was a great help when parents and families of LGBT people joined us for our church services, or even in a Pride March, or generally when I'm meeting church representatives, bishops or priests, I always take a mom or dad or a cousin with me, because they are the ones that the church representatives feel, oh, yeah, they have it bad because they have this gay or trans child, so they are the ones that I can help with. So basically be there and accompany your LGBT friends or a family when it is when they need your support in the church.
Fantastic.
Also, something I learned from allies in a German synod is talk about your way of learning openly. Because in a way that we as queer people, we can only impress with our stories and change lives, you know. But straight allies can come from a point, I used to think so too, but then I learned, and then I changed. And making this change transparent and visible is so important within a church. And it's something that can only be done by straight allies.
Thank you. So brilliant. Appreciate everyone's amazing contributions. So give them a round of applause, please. Thank you.